Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Hi everybody, it's Ezra Levant here. It's March 5th. It's 12 noon Eastern time, which means it's 10 a.m. in Alberta. And not long ago, a court in that city ruled that Pastor James Coates, the pastor of the Grace Life Church just outside the city limits in Edmonton, must remain in prison for 2 more months. I think it's 2 more months. We're going to speak to his lawyer in about half an hour to get the details, for the crime of not closing his church. Now, of course, it's not a crime. It is not a crime to have a church open. In fact, it's the opposite of a crime. It's protected by our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 2A. Section 2 is what we call fundamental freedoms. It lists all the biggies: freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of association. But those are not the first. The very first fundamental freedom upon which all the others stand is freedom of thought, belief, opinion, religion. Because if you're not allowed to believe something, then it really doesn't matter if you're allowed to speak, if you're allowed to assemble or associate. Freedom of conscience and belief and opinion and religion is the most important freedom. It is the building block, the strategic freedom upon which the others stand. It is not against the law for someone to believe that he has the right to attend a church, open a church. And it makes no sense, even on its own lockdownist terms, to ban a church service but to let Costco and Walmart open up. Makes no sense. But this isn't about a pandemic or a virus, hasn't been for a very long time. We talked to Sheila yesterday, who watched the bail hearing yesterday, and we learned a lot of things from that. Sheila's going to join us shortly too. And one of the arguments made by Karen Thorsrud, the Alberta government prosecutor, and I'm just so embarrassed to say it because I really like Jason Kenney and I really like Casey Madu, the Justice Minister, but Karen Thorsrud is there in their name. So I can't just say Karen Thorsrud is a disgraceful prosecutor for prosecuting a pastor for opening his church. She is disgraceful, and may her name forever be remembered as the disgraceful prosecutor who locked up a pastor for opening a church. Yes, she is a disgrace, of course. But she does not act on her own. She's not the boss. She's part of a chain of command that a good man named Casey Madu is the Justice Minister of Alberta, and a good man named Jason Kenney is the Premier of Alberta. They cannot say, oh, it's just her, because it is a political choice to prosecute this thought crime. And I call it a thought crime. Again, it is not actually a crime. If this church, in the end, is convicted of breaking some public health order, and they have not been convicted of anything yet, they've just been given some tickets. That's like when you're given a ticket for a parking offense. That's what the cop says. That's one side of the story, and maybe eventually you will be convicted. But that's not the full course of the justice system. He's in prison before the case is heard. The irony is, if the case is finally heard and convicted, there is no jail time for it. There's no jail time contemplated in any of these public health orders. So how can you put a guy in jail? He's been in jail for more than 2 weeks, and he's got another 8 weeks to go. And he's been doing hard time. I spoke briefly to his lawyer right before I came on the show. We're going to talk to his lawyer in about 25 minutes, so we'll get these informations directly. But how can you serve hard time in a maximum security prison in Edmonton because they won't release you on bail? How can you serve time in prison for an offense that, if you're convicted of, does not have a prison term? I understand why, if someone is charged with murder, you can keep them behind bars awaiting trial. The answer, actually, it goes to our very old laws regarding bail. There is a presumption that you can be released on bail unless 2 things are there. Number one, are you a flight risk? as in, are you going to run away and never come back to court? That's actually the number one reason to not deny someone bail. Obviously, this church pastor ain't running to Venezuela. He wants to go back to his church. He's not leaving the jurisdiction. There is no flight risk with Pastor Coates. The other reason is danger, violence. That's really, I think, an important reason why violent criminals are held without bail. Because, whoa, there we go. Sheila's Skyping me. That's Sheila Gunn Reid, who was watching the court today. She just Skyped me on my phone. We're going to hook her up through the system so you can share that too. Pastor James Coates is not violent. He's no risk to himself or to others. And if you think, well, by violence we mean someone might get the Rona, but there has not been an outbreak at all in this church. There just hasn't been, and they've been operating for half a year. So that's just not true. So you could say the judge is a disgrace here too. Sounds like Sheila's connected. We'll pipe her in now via Skype. Sheila, how you doing?
Today is terrible. I don't know if my audio is okay or not.
Yeah, it's working fine, Sheila. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Terrible decision came down today. The judge said that no new evidence was basically presented, that there was no error in law made by the original Justice of the Peace, the original Justice of the Peace said that there is no justification for holding Pastor James behind bars, except he has to agree to those bail conditions that violate his religious freedom and his conscience. So he remains now a political prisoner till, it sounds like, his trial in May. So
let's just back up here for a minute. And by the way, Sheila, thanks for joining us. You're in your vehicle. You're in Edmonton, are you?
I am in Edmonton. Because these are virtual conferences, I cannot attend in person. However, I was not sure if there would be Pastor James supporters down here. There were not today. It sounds like everybody is just dealing with the heartbreak of this on their own. But I thought I would come down just to see if there were people down here that I could speak to. But it was just a virtual conference. And I did see that Pastor James's wife was on the bail hearing conference call today. So she heard the bad news firsthand.
Got it. So are you at the prison or the courthouse?
Courthouse.
Got it. So you're in the courthouse in Edmonton, where through a virtual hearing, the original ruling by the Justice of the Peace to deny Pastor Coates bail was upheld. And so he must stay in prison for 2 more months until his full hearing on the matter of should he shut down the church. And by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, and we'll talk to his lawyer in about 20 minutes. If he's convicted of that ultimate offense, there is no jail for that. So he's doing 10 weeks in prison for an offense that there is no incarceration contemplated. Is that right?
Right. Now, we did learn today that there's an additional charge. So there are 2 charges of breaking the public health order. Mm-hmm. There's a criminal charge for breaking an undertaking, because Pastor James was arrested and released on February 7th in his office for breaking the public health orders, at which point he was given an undertaking that he did not sign that said that he cannot hold services the following week, which he did. So from that stems the criminal charge.
All right, let me jump in here. So an undertaking is just a fancy word that means a promise. I undertake not to do this. And but in a legal setting, an undertaking can be a little bit more binding. For example, if a lawyer gives an undertaking, especially, it can be something you can hold them to. If a cop presents an accused person with an undertaking, sign this promise. You know, we hear released on their own recognizance, released with bail conditions. The judge would say to the guy, or the cop would say to the guy, do you promise not to go back into that place? Do you promise not to do that again? Do you promise to live with your mom and not drink? Whatever, there's a bunch, it could be anything. And if the guy says, yeah, copper, I promise and I'll sign it, then that's sort of a strong promise that you take to the judge and say, look, he broke his promise. But you're saying to me, and I've seen this from his lawyers, the Justice Center, that the cops put to him a proposed draft, suggested set of words and said, sign this promise. And he said, I'm not signing that.
Yep.
So he did not give them the promise. He did not give them the undertaking. So he cannot have breached an undertaking he didn't give. They wanted him to give that undertaking. The whole point is he ain't doing it. The fact that he's sitting in prison shows you he's adamant that a guy who's in prison because he wants to open up his church, he's not going to sign an undertaking not to open his church. I mean, of all the people in the world, he ain't going to sign it. How did that get through the courts? How did they believe that he signed this undertaking when, did they show a piece of paper that he signed?
No. And James Kitchen from the Justice Center, Pastor Coates' lawyer, he's very clear. Pastor James didn't sign this because he can't in good conscience sign it. It's the same reason he can't sign his bail conditions to be let out. It's the same reason he languishes today in a maximum security provincial jail. It's because he cannot in good conscience do that. And again, today, secret prosecutor is back again. She's labeled as the public health prosecutor, and nobody seems to have any problem with this, that we have a secret prosecutor who is locking up a Christian pastor and hiding her identity from public scrutiny because she doesn't want to have to answer for this.
Yeah. Now, I've never heard of a public health prosecutor before. I assume it's just a regular prosecutor. Her name is Karen Thorsrud, K-A-R-E-N, Thorsrud, T-H-O-R-S-U-D. Justin,
Yes.
can you Google that and put that on the screen? Karen Thorsrud of Edmonton, a prosecutor. And the reason I want to get her name right is because I think her name ought to be known the same way we know Pastor James Coates' name and we know the name of everyone else in our system. But I understand, and you correct, and I'm going to run this by, Karen L. Thorsrud. Did I spell that right when I spelled it out? T-H-O-R-S-R-U-D. I might have missed a letter, but that's how you spell it. Can you get me a better link? Can you find that on some other, that's just some generic law list. I know I'm sending you on a wild goose chase here, Justin, but if there's an image of her, if there's a LinkedIn of her, I want to show her because I want to counteract a sneaky trick she pulled yesterday.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead, Sheila.
You're going to have a hard time finding her because I did some poking around last night because I knew her name. It had shown up on a protest sign in some of my footage, and it looks like she's scrubbed all of the public images of her from her LinkedIn account and such. So she's making it very difficult to identify who she is.
Yeah.
And which is ironic because yesterday during the initial bail hearing arguments, she left the camera on her WebEx call. So everybody knows what all 400 people who tuned in yesterday know exactly what she looks like. Most of us already know her name, but this is outrageous that she gets to do this and she gets to do it under the cloak of anonymity.
Yeah. Now, let me tell you why we're publishing the name Karen Thorsrud. We don't believe in doxing people. We don't believe, for example, in showing a person's private information, their private home, things like that. But a public prosecutor who's putting a pastor in jail cannot do so anonymously. But I think that's what happened. And here's what I mean by that.
There's no publication ban in place to prohibit anybody's name. The Crown didn't ask for one. The defense didn't ask for one. There's no publication ban here. So why is she getting this courtesy?
Right. And that's the thing. So I want you to, and I'm just looking through a website called newspapers.com to see if we can get an image of Karen Thorsrud. In our system, justice is transparent and it's public. Anyone can walk into a court. Now, during the age of COVID, because they don't allow the public to meet en masse. A lot of courts now are on Zoom or some other video service, and I think it's generally a good thing. I know in Parliament, turning on TV cameras makes people ham it up a bit more, but I think in courts, it's important for people to see justice. One of the reasons we publish legal decisions is so everyone knows what the law is. Everyone knows what the expectations are in society. And one of the reasons why we have the names of judges and the names of prosecutors, the names of everybody, is so there can be accountability, so there's no secret agendas. It's one of the reasons why you're allowed to meet your accuser, face your accuser, so you can say, oh, I know you, you've had a vendetta against me since, oh, I know you, or who are you? So sunlight is the best disinfectant. But, and you correct me because you were on the call yesterday, Sheila, I understand that yesterday morning, this prosecutor said to the judge, hey, judge, can I keep my name Karen Thorsrud secret? I don't want anyone to know I'm the prosecutor. Now, I've heard of keeping the names of children secret. In fact, if a child is charged as a young offender, their name is secret. In cases of child abuse, sometimes even parents' names can be kept secret to keep the children's identity secret. I'm aware that some national security prosecutions, certain matters are secret within the court because they go to national security. But never in my life have I heard a prosecutor who's putting a pastor in jail say, Judge, I know it might sound a little goofy, but can you keep my name, Karen Thorsrud, secret? And I spoke to a lawyer last night about this. I see section 486.5 of the Criminal Code, Special Procedure and Powers, does allow someone to make an application to keep an identity secret, but it has to be done in writing, and notice has to be given to everybody, and there has to be factors considered, whether there's a real and substantial risk that the victim, witness, or justice system participant would suffer harm if their identity was disclosed, that they would get intimidation or retaliation, that effective alternatives are in place, that that the impact of the proposed order on the freedom of expression of those affected. Like, there's actually a list of 8 factors that a court has to consider, and it has to be an application with notice to everybody in writing. You can't just walk into court and say, hey, judge, I know I'm doing an extremely odious thing. I know I am being scrutinized by every free person in Canada, the United States, and the free world because I'm a disgrace for putting a pastor in prison. I know what I'm doing is morally wrong, and I know that this will tack onto my name, Karen Thorsrud, for the rest of my career. Can you just keep me secret? And the judge says, sure, we're all friends here. And so yesterday it was kept secret. Now, I'm advised that this morning we tried to send lawyers into court virtually from Toronto and from Alberta. We had like 4 lawyers trying to get in there to say, yeah, no. And I understand from legal counsel that there is no publication ban today. That's why I'm saying the name Karen Thorsrud, Karen Thorsrud. Karen Thorsrud is the creepy pastor prosecutor, and she knows she's creepy because she wanted to keep her name secret, and she implied, and I'm going to let you get a word in edgewise in about 30 seconds, Sheila, don't worry. She implied that there were threats against her by these little lambs in this church, as if, first of all, if that's true, call the cops.
Yeah.
Second of all, she's a wicked liar trying to invert, oh, I'm the victim here, not this pastor I'm putting in jail, I'm the victim. And finally, we have prosecutors putting mafiosi in jail, we have prosecutors putting terrorists in jail, we have prosecutors putting Hells Angels bike gangs in jail, we have prosecutors putting murderers in jail, and they somehow manage to do it. And if there's a real threat, give her security. Go after the people making the threat. I think she's a wicked liar who's trying to be a crybaby and say, I'm the victim here, Judge. It's not this pastor I got in jail. I'm the victim. Can you keep my name secret because people know who I am now? That's what I think is happening. What do you think, Sheila?
Ezra, it was even more casual than the little crybaby play that you just put on for all of us. I jumped on the call yesterday at 1 p.m. and before the call started, she just said, I'm going to just keep my name as the public health prosecutor, which there's really no such thing. But she said, that's how I'm going to keep my name just because of my personal safety. And everybody was fine with it. The judge didn't say, okay, well, I'd like to hear arguments, see evidence. What's your justification for this? Nothing. It was just like, fine, okay, I guess we are. So on the WebEx call where everybody's identified, including me as a member of the media, I have to put my proper name there and identify myself. She didn't have to do that. And it was a very casual discussion. It wasn't like she even asked for permission. She just said that she was going to do it.
Yeah, that ain't how it works in a real country, in a real justice system. Maybe that's how it works in a police state or some kangaroo court. And I think Karen Thorsrud needs to be held accountable. But of course, you can't have someone be accountable to themselves. Her boss and her boss's boss and her boss's boss's boss have to be accountable. Now I have in front of me, we're going to get the lawyers in about 9 minutes. We're talking about a detail, and it's not the most important detail. The most important detail is that a Christian pastor has been in jail for more than 2 weeks, and he is now going to be in jail until May 3rd.
Yep.
Just, that is 2 months from now, right? March, there's 30 days in, are there 30 days in March? May 3rd to 5th. 30 days has September, April, 31. And then March, April. So he's in jail for 60 more days, plus the 15 or so he's served. That's coming up on 90 days in jail, hard time, maximum security. I think I told you that the very first time I went to criminal court as a baby lawyer, I saw someone convicted of sexual assault, 30-day sentence. This pastor has not been convicted of anything. The crime for which he's charged is not a crime. The sentence, if he's found guilty, has no incarceration, and he will do 90 days hard time, which is the equivalent of almost a year, because it's hard time, maximum security time.
Yep.
And this is an international disgrace.
Yep. Because he would not bend the knee to the state. The judge in the decision today said that the law remains valid and enforceable against Pastor Coates. So if the provincial government changed the law, he would be, the law is no longer valid, the one which they arrested him under. And the judge said that notwithstanding his religious freedom, he remains subject to the rule of law. The judge said he heard nothing new and still considered the safety of the public when he was remanding or continuing to remand Pastor Coates, which is strange because this is a legal system that releases sex offenders on pinky swear, I won't hurt anybody else. And then they reoffend while on bail all the time. And the judge also cited Coates' own affidavit against him, as in Coates wrote an affidavit, sworn affidavits to the effect of the convictions of Grace Life Church, their religious convictions, that the authority of the local church and the supreme authority of the Lord Jesus Christ for him are sacrosanct, and the medical officer of health has no authority to determine the terms of worship in Canada. But in that affidavit, the judge said that, and I'm quoting here, he used the term unrepentant admission of quotes, that he would continue to hold or attend service. That's another detail that's being missed in here. Coates can't even attend service if the service is non-compliant. So he couldn't get released today, say, fine, we're going to let Associate Pastor Jake Spence, who's been at it for 2 weeks now, to a packed house. I'll go to church, and he can say the service. Pastor Coates can't go to a church that is in non-compliance. That's how onerous these restrictions are to his conscience. Are you there, boss?
I am here. You know, I'm looking up the name of the judge. Peter Michalyshyn is the name of the judge. Apparently he was a journalist back in the day.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah, here I have, an article written by Peter Michalyshyn in 1982 in the Edmonton Journal. I'm going to do some digging around into what Peter Michalyshyn is like, because it's on the judge too. It's not just the prosecutor.
Sure, because the judge also cited the public health when James Coates and James Kitchen, the lawyer, said, well, you can't cite the public health when there's no demonstrable harm to the public health, given that this church has just been given her at full capacity since July. Where's the public health damage? You're convicting them of a pre-crime here.
Yeah. I want to read a little bit from the release that the Justice Center put out. Do you have that handy there, Justin? Sheila, stay with us. I'm just going to read from a press release. Get news release. Good. Yeah, thank you. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is very disappointed to announce that that Justice Peter Michalyshyn, I'm reading from an email which is slightly different, of the Alberta Court of Queen's Bench in Edmonton has ruled that Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church must remain in jail for the next 8 weeks pending his trial unless he agrees to abide by health orders that violate his charter of freedoms of conscience, religion, expression, association, and peaceful assembly. Pastor Coates has been in custody at the Edmonton Remand Center since February 16 after he refused to sign a bail condition. Well, and it sounds like they're pretending he did sign the condition and getting him for lying when he didn't sign it.
He never signed it.
The Justice Center filed an appeal with the Alberta Court of Queen's Bench. The Justice Center represents Pastor Coates. A trial set 8 weeks down the road was too long for an innocent pastor to be in jail. Pastor Coates is a peaceful Christian minister. He should never have been required to violate his conscience and effectively stop pastoring his church as a condition to be released. In every way, this was a violation of Pastor Coates' charter rights and freedoms, states lawyer John Carpay. Charter freedoms do not disappear because the government declares regular church services to be outlawed while allowing hundreds of people to fill their local Walmarts, notes Carpay. So we're going to have John Carpay on the show in about 5 minutes. The reason I spent some time, Sheila, on Karen Thorsrud, the prosecutor trying to hide her name, is I just want to come back to that for a second. It shows what's in the mind of the prosecutor. Prosecutors, they're instructed to prosecute what comes across their desks. That's their job. So police bring in something, the prosecutor looks at it and says, all right, is this in the public interest to prosecute? Is there a reasonable chance of conviction? So they don't prosecute everything. We've had a lot of fight the fines cases. A prosecutor looks at it and says, I'm not going into court with this crap. Like Pastor Arthur Pavlovsky in Calgary given a $1,200 ticket for feeding the homeless. The prosecutor down there looked at that and said, yeah, thank you very little. I'm not running with that one. So you have the police discretion, you have the prosecutor's discretion, but at the end of the day, if there's an order, get him. You don't think this has been talked about all the way up to the Justice Department's Justice Minister's office and the Premier's office? You don't think this has come up in caucus and cabinet? So if the message that comes down is get him, the prosecutor may proceed, and the prosecutor might say, you know what, I don't like this, but I'm not working in a private law firm. I don't choose and pick my clients. My client is the government of Alberta, and they said, get him. So I have to go get him. All right, I'm going to do my job. And I have no opinion on the matter. I'm just going to do my job. And if I don't like it, I'll get another job. But that's not what we see here. What we see here is someone who knows that the outcome is, well, I don't know if she knows or believes that it's inappropriate, illegal, unconstitutional, disgraceful. I don't know what her own heart is, but it is clear she knows that the public feels that way. And she wants to hide from what she's doing. And I would say, sister, if you don't like what you see when you look in the mirror, quit your job. If you don't like what you see when you read people saying Karen Thorsrud put a pastor in jail, if you don't like that, argue within your Justice Department that maybe jailing a pastor is not the Canadian thing to do. And if you don't like it, it has to be transferred off the case or quit. Don't be a sneaky little lawyer and just say, I'm not letting anyone know my name, Karen Thorsrud, because that shows me what's going on in your mind. You know what you're doing is a public disgrace that does not have the support of the people, and you are bringing the administration of justice into disrepute. Karen Thorsrud, whether she's acting on her own or on the instructions of the Justice Minister or even the Premier, the Cabinet of the Caucus, is bringing the administration of justice into disrepute. Sheila, last word to you, and then I'm going to let John Carpay in. I'm sorry you didn't get a lot of words in. I'm just so steaming mad. I'm on a full tilt here. Give me a minute or two in closing, and then I'm going to put John Carpay, the Justice Center lawyer, on. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, if people want to hear what I have to say about this, I have a video coming out later on today that they can tune in to find out what I really think about what happened here. But at the end of the day, even if the Crown Prosecutor is saying that we have to keep this pastor in jail because he's going to get out and he's going to minister and the church is going to be full, well, guess what, sister? The church is still full. It's full every single week. So the reason by which you're justifying your continued incarceration of this completely innocent, peaceful man, it's still happening. So you cannot justify holding him behind bars to stop the church from being full. The church is full. And the longer they keep him, the more churches open up. And the fuller the churches across this province get, because that is, on the flip side, if you want to find a glass half full in all of this, there are a lot of Christians right now finding a lot of Christian zeal and realizing that they need to be obedient to their religious beliefs and not to the government.
Yeah. You know, there's that meme I refer to from time to time. Maybe you've seen it. It's a scene from some Nazi rally early in the Hitler era, and everyone's got their hand out in a Sieg Heil, except for one guy who's got his arms crossed. And the meme is, be this guy. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. Justin, can you grab that meme? And everyone says, yeah, that would be me, man. That would be mean. I'd never go along with those guys. I'm not a Nazi. No way. I'm an independent thinker, and I know good from evil. And I put it, yeah, that's the meme. You see that meme there? Everyone's got the Sieg Heil but that guy, and that's typically the caption on that is, be this guy. Okay, well, this is now. It's not just 80 years ago. And I'm not saying that this public health prosecutor is a Nazi, but I'm saying this is a destruction of civil liberties. This is illegal, unconstitutional, odious. The lawyer obviously knows it because she's trying to hide her name, Karen Thorsrud. And so this is the time for people to fold their arms over their chest and say, I'm not going to go along. So this is a time for anyone who ever said, oh, if we were persecuted, I'd do something. If there was a moral moment, I'd be counted then. Luckily, I don't have those tests in my life. For 50 years, we haven't had those tests. Here's the test now. And so I would say to any Christian or any Jew, Sikh, Muslim, Tamil, whatever, Hindu, whatever religion you have, this is your moment to prove that you're that guy. And Pastor Coates is in jail, and he's going to be for 8 weeks. So this is the moment for every church, because they can keep one pastor in jail, but there aren't enough jails to jail 1,000 Christians in Alberta, or 10,000 or 100,000. If I were a Christian, and I am not, I would go to church this weekend just 'cause. And if I were a pastor or a priest, this is the moment where I would prove that every sermon I've been giving for my entire career actually was rooted in belief and not just earning a living. This is the moment. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their church, I would say. And Sheila, you're going to be at the Grace Life Church in Edmonton this Sunday, is that right?
I will. If not, I might be in another church that is willing to do exactly what you're talking about. But we will, either way, we'll be covering Grace Life. Okay,
well, if we need to send another reporter there, I know you'll let me know. Sheila, I know I didn't let you get a lot of words in edgewise, and you know that's a risk when you come on my live stream. But it is true that we value your reportage very much. You've done excellent reporting on this. You had the last interview with Pastor Coates before he was jailed. You were at the remand center for a massive protest in his support. You followed his hearings the last 2 days. And so I do encourage everyone who says, Ezra, why didn't you shut up and let Sheila talk? I do encourage them to watch Sheila's videos that will be coming out on our YouTube channel. Sheila, it's not that I don't want to hear you, it's just I'm so full to the brim on these things, and I feel like I must get these things out. I know you will do a series of videos on this, and you will make us so proud, as you always do, Sheila. This story was made for you. You're geographically there. You care about people. You fight the fines for diners and, you know, hairstylists and nail ladies, so of course you'll be there for the church. And we sent you at great personal risk, which, you know, perhaps in retrospect wasn't a good idea, but you came back okay. We sent you to Iraq to see how Christians are doing under the specter of ISIS and an Iranian militia called Hashd al-Shabi. We sent you into hell for Christians to see the bombed out churches in Batnaya. And so you've seen Christian persecution when it goes down that road all the way. You're the perfect reporter for this story, and we're just so very proud of you.
Well, thanks, Ezra. When I came back from northern Iraq, I was ashamed of the Christian churches here, how we never prayed for our Christian brothers over there. We didn't care about their persecution. And when I came home, I thought, if I ever see Christian persecution here, seeing what I've seen, I have a job to fight it. And I have this platform, gratefully, from you and everybody who supports the work that we do, so that I'm able to do that. So how could I not? I'm called to do this through my own faith, but through what I've seen too.
Well, that's great, and we thank you for that. Sheila, I'm going to say goodbye to you now because we have John Carpay standing by, and he is the president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. They are representing Pastor Coates in court. Thanks, Sheila. I'll say bye now, and I look forward to watching your vids.
Thanks, boss.
All right, there you have it. Sheila Gunn Reid, Chief Reporter, Rebel News. And I'm sorry that I talk too much. I just feel like there's a lot of things I have to say here. Let's see if I can be slightly better behaved with our next guest, John Carpay. Is John on the line, Justin? We're just taking 1 second. I think we can only handle a certain number of Skype calls at once, so we're just going to connect with John right now. I see the super chats are coming in. I will get to those. Maybe I'll do a couple right now as we connect, as we work on connecting, but I'm going to hop off this immediately. If John comes on, Sandy Poklar, $40. Are you aware of the relationship that Cruella de Villa's husband, Dr. Richard Choi, receiving speaker fees from AstraZeneca and Pfizer? How is that not a conflict of interest? How does she not step down over this? Oh, and that's just tip of the iceberg. Sandy, I am hearing in my ear, and I see Justin waving at me. We have John Carpay, so I'm going to come back to the super chats later. Hey, John, I see you crystal clear via Skype. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. You're in Alberta right now. We introduced you already, President of the Justice Center. You're the lawyer. Your firm, your public interest law firm, Charity, works for James Coates. Can you give me an update? We were just talking to Sheila, who was on the calls yesterday and today, but is there any news you have for us today?
Well, Pastor Coates sadly is going to be staying in the Edmonton Remand Center for the next 8 weeks. We are contemplating an appeal to the Alberta Court of Appeal, so there's still a possibility if we proceed with that, and if we're successful, we would like to get him out of jail sooner, so that's under consideration right now. Otherwise, this is a pastor who's been in jail since February the 16th, already more than 2 weeks, and now for another 8 weeks in jail for not being willing to comply with unscientific and unconstitutional health orders, in respect to which the Alberta government has put forward no evidence that the health orders are serving the interests of public safety. This is an assumption that the judge was operating on this morning, and I'm not making the claim that he was incorrect in law, but certainly very sad when you've got governments that are not providing science or evidence to back up these health orders, and they're engaging in fear-mongering. And then now we've got a pastor in jail for not being in full compliance with the unconstitutional health orders.
All right, I got a few questions for you. I'm going to try and run through them. I know your time is limited. You have a lot of things to do today. He's still at the Edmonton Remand Center. I think we have some visuals of that. It's a maximum security facility, typically used when violent criminals are arrested and they're held before bail. It's also a longer-term facility, but the visuals I've seen of it, I was in the old remand center as a lawyer once. I haven't been in the new remand center, but it visually reminds me of another maximum security prison I was in. It is a terrible place to be in. You're with murderers, drug dealers, rapists. Is it your understanding that Pastor Coates will remain in this horrible facility for the next 8 weeks?
That's my understanding, yes. And
in maximum security. I've never heard of such a thing before. Like there's surely minimum security. Heck, put him in one of these quarantine hotels that Trudeau has set up. I've never heard of a non-violent pastor 8 weeks in maximum security with murderers. I've never heard of that.
Well, this is the ideology of Jason Kenney's government right now in the UCP, is that if you violate one of these unconstitutional health orders, that you are just as much of a threat to society as a murderer or a rapist. That is the ideology of the government right now. And Pastor Coates is paying the price for that ideology. The silver lining on the cloud is that we do have a trial date, May 3rd to May 5th. And for the first time ever, the Alberta government, after violating our charter rights and freedoms for almost 12 months now, for the first time the government's going to have to show the public some evidence. They're going to have to prove before the court that COVID is an unusually deadly killer, which is something they've been telling us. But I mean, Statistics Canada tells us that the death rates in Canada in 2020 were very much in line with the death rates in 2019, 2018, 2017. The government's going to have to put forward evidence to support its theory that healthy, asymptomatic people are significant spreaders of the virus. They're going to have to show us the science. They can't just claim that. The government's going to have to show us the science on the PCR tests, which are unreliable, which were never intended to diagnose COVID, and which have false positive rates as high as 90%. The government's going to have to justify in court why they are choosing to rely on these PCR tests. The government's going to have to show in court that the lockdowns have actually achieved some good. Now, that's easy to claim. You hear politicians all the time telling us, well, if it wasn't for these lockdowns, way more people would have died. Well, I'm sorry, that's speculation. That's just an assertion. They're going to have to back up that assertion in court. The government's going to be having to answer for all of the lockdown harms in court. All they're doing now is kind of making some cooing, sympathetic noises about how hard this must be for people that have lost their jobs. But the government's going to have to show in court that the lockdowns are doing more good than harm. So the silver lining on the cloud is that because of the suffering of Pastor Coates, the government's going to be forced to show the public the science and the evidence for the first time ever. Because all we've had in the last 12 months is fear-mongering and speculation and assertions. And the government doesn't have the evidence, and they're going to have to scramble hard in the next 2 months to come up with it.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if I would have the toughness and the courage to go to jail for something I believe in. I mean, I've never done a criminal thing in my life. I wouldn't go to jail as a criminal. I would go to jail for some political crime. And I've never been arrested at all, but occasionally I think, would I have the courage, and would my family support me, and my friends and my would our business continue? And in my mind, I've always thought, okay, I'm in jail overnight or something. I can't imagine 10, 11 weeks in that place. I just can't imagine that suffering.
Pastor Coates,
suffering.
This is tremendous courage. I asked myself the same question, because I think it's highly unlikely that I would ever be in jail for committing a criminal offense. But I do sometimes ask myself the question, would I be willing to go to jail for exercising my charter freedoms of speech and expression and religion and conscience and association and peaceful assembly? I would hope that I would have the same courage that Pastor Coates is currently displaying, and that he's displaying every day.
Yeah.
He can get out of jail on a moment's notice if he's willing to violate his conscience and comply with unscientific and unconstitutional health orders. I would only hope that I would have the courage that he is displaying currently. If ever it came to that for myself, I would only hope that I would have that level of courage.
Yeah, it's extremely rare, and yet it may be the thing that turns the tide for us. Let me speed up with my questions, and I know I'm asking you some philosophical questions, and you're answering very thoughtfully. Now, when I was talking to Sheila Gunn Reid a moment ago, I put something to her, and she agreed with me, but I want to check with you, because you're a lawyer closely working on this case. It's my understanding that the charges, or the offenses, against this pastor are basically public health orders for which the penalty could be a fine, but not a criminal conviction, certainly, and not jail time. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because the point I take from that is he's serving 10 weeks hard time in a maximum security prison for an offense that's akin to a speeding ticket. You're not going to go to jail for it even if you're convicted. So we're holding a guy in prison until his trial, and even if he loses his trial in the worst way possible, he wouldn't be going to prison then. Am I right, or have I mistaken the law there?
My understanding is that Pastor Coates would not go to prison unless he was found in contempt of court. And so if the Alberta government sought a specific injunction against Grace Life Church in Edmonton, then and was successful, and if there was a specific court injunction against that church, and if Pastor Coates or other members of that church then defied the injunction, they could be found to be in contempt of court.
But the actual health offense does not contemplate. The actual
health offense, my understanding is there's no jail time for that.
So he's doing 10 weeks in maximum security, being held for a trial, that on the substance he couldn't be jailed for 1 day.
That seems to be the case. Yeah, no. And if I hear otherwise, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, let me know.
That's my understanding, is that there's no jail time as penalty for violating this these unscientific and unconstitutional public health orders.
Let me ask you about something that Sheila and I were talking about. It's been a long time since I practiced law, but bail, the law of bail, is not that complicated. Basically, there's two grounds. I mean, you practice law every day. The first is, are you a flight risk? Are you going to show up for your trial? So a pastor with roots in the community, with a family, he's not flying off to Venezuela. So there's no flight risk. This guy's going to show up, obviously. And
he's fully committed. He's fully committed to showing up for trial.
Yeah, it would be absurd to say otherwise.
Nobody. The Crown is not even alleging that that there's any chance that he's not going to show up for his trial.
So the second ground is danger to the community, and that typically means danger of violence. So that's why you would keep a terrorist or a murderer or a rapist in jail, because you're actually worried that they'll do something violent. Obviously, there's no violence from this man. It would be a stretch to say the danger is, public, because he's not infected himself. He's not like Typhoid Mary. And here's the kicker. His church is opening without him. In fact, his church is opening in solidarity with him. We've had Sheila Gunn Reid there the last couple of weekends documenting it. Church is packed. So whether he's released or not, that church is packed. it's not correlated to whether or not he's released. In fact, it might even be a reverse correlation. They're there because he's in jail. So what exactly is the danger? So on the first grounds, flight risk, there is none, and you're saying the Crown, Karen Thorsrud, doesn't even say there's a risk. On the second grounds, danger, obviously he's not a danger of violence. The only danger I could possibly think of is they would say he would make a health danger by having the full church, but that doesn't turn on whether or not he's released because they're open anyways. How does that make sense?
No, Ezra, I cannot disagree with your reasoning. I mean, if this was really so we've got two things at play. One is we've got the ideology of Jason Kenney as well as Rachel Notley. I mean, the UCP and the NDP, they're both pro lockdown parties. So we've got an ideology here that says that a full church is as much of a threat to the public as murderers that are on the loose. But then we also have and I don't want to tempt the powers that be, but you've got an inconsistent application of that ideology insofar as if Sheila Gunn Reid has been at the church and the church is packed, then logically the government should send in 1,000 police officers and just arrest everybody there. And I don't know if Jason Kenney's willing to go that far, but there's certainly an inconsistency here that I haven't been at the church. I'm in Calgary, a 3-hour drive away. But if you tell me that Sheila Gunn Reid has been there and it's packed, and I take that to be true, then you've got supposedly this big public health risk that is continuing. So it's just disgraceful. This is the consequence of people blindly accepting whatever politicians tell them and just blindly grasping for this illusion of safety when the hard data, the Alberta Health Services data, Statistics Canada data, tells us that COVID is not an unusually deadly killer, and it's not something that everybody should be afraid of. And it would just make far more sense to protect the vulnerable, which is, if you're 82 years old and you're sick and you're elderly and you're in a nursing home and you already have, cancer, emphysema, heart disease, what have you, then those are the people that we should be protecting. But to violate our human dignity and our human rights and our fundamental freedoms by, not being allowed to have your parents over for Christmas dinner, it's just appalling, and things will get worse as long as the public is complacent and continues to buy into this fear mongering that is just not grounded on facts.
Yeah. I know you've got to go at the top of the hour, so we only have is that right? You've got to go, you've got a hard exit.
I've got until 11, yeah.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes, and I'll be judicious with our time. Sheila and I talked about the disgrace of Karen Thorsrud, the prosecutor, trying to hide her name from the public yesterday, pretending that she's been under threat by these little lambs at the church. I think that's patently absurd on the face of it. If it is in fact true, well then send those threats to the police. They certainly seem to be eager to enforce them brutally. Maybe Pastor Coates will have some roommates. I don't believe it for a second. I think that you have a prosecutor who realizes she's doing something contrary to the public interest, and as I said earlier, bringing the administration of justice into disrepute. And so naturally she wants to hide her name, and she also wants to play the victim because the whole world sees that she's actually the persecutor. So the fact that Karen Thorsrud wants to hide her name is contrary to our nature and law, and I'm going to shout her name to the rafters. But I also must note, John, that we do not have independent prosecutor, advocate, one-man shows. Like some European jurisdictions have strange sort of independent roving prosecutors with no checks and balances on them. You could even say the American special prosecutor system allows that. But Karen Thorsrud has a boss, and her boss has a boss. Casey Madhu, the Justice Minister, Jason Kenney, the Premier. I believe that Cabinet and Caucus both discussed this matter. At what point do they say, drop this? Can they say, drop this? Do they have the legal power to say, drop this? This is contrary to law, contrary to the Constitution. How can we get what is clearly a political prosecution to be stopped?
You know, it's a good question, and I dearly want to see Pastor Coates released from jail as soon as possible, and he should never have been jailed in the first place. It is a thorny and challenging question that you ask, because one of the aspects of the rule of law is that politicians, the politically elected people, do not interfere in prosecutions. And the whole country was looking at this issue a year and a half ago with Prime Minister Trudeau interfering with Jody Raymond Wilson. I'm sorry if I've got her
Jody
name
Wilson
wrong.
Raybould, in the SNC-Lavalin matter, you bet Trudeau was trying to get his friends off the hook, clearly corrupt, but he was doing it in a sneaky way. This is the opposite. This is a public interest, and it would be a public explanation. This wouldn't be, hey, psst, let my rich friends at SNC-Lavalin go from their corruption case. This is a public statement. Whoa, this is contrary to public. Like it's the same question of political interference, but that was interfering to let a genuine confessed criminal organization go. I mean, SNC-Lavalin confessed to crimes. The question was, do they get a plea bargain or not? This is a man who has been charged with no crime and is being persecuted in a manner no one's ever heard of before. I think it's the same issue, but opposite sides of the spectrum of right and wrong.
Well, you know, I'm totally sympathetic to what you're saying. And like I said, I'd like to see him get out of jail. But we do have to ask ourselves, do we want a country or a province, in this case, where the elected officials are, interfering with who gets prosecuted, who does not get prosecuted, who gets put in jail, who does not get put in jail. So it's kind of scary territory. I will say about Karen Thorsrud, though, that perhaps she believes sincerely that she is doing the right thing. I try to not, go into people's hearts and minds, and I assume that people they have good motives. They're doing what they believe to be right. But what I think is incredibly slimy is for her to pretend that somehow her safety is at risk. And I would love it if she, if that is the case, she should put an affidavit in the court, and she should have, transcripts of the death threats, if any, or she should have, the threatening emails or notes or this or that, because Pastor Coates is 100% peaceful, 100% nonviolent. The members of his congregation are peaceful and nonviolent. His wife was interviewed last night by Danielle Smith, and she said that she's very sad and heartbroken by being separated from her husband, and at the same time she accepts that this is reality. So this is not a biker gang or some criminal operation. And it's interesting because when you do get trials before the court where there's a prosecutor who's going after a biker gang or some criminal activity, in those scenarios, the prosecutor wears it as a badge of honor that his or her name is publicly known. So for Karen Thorsrud to be wanting her name not mentioned on court documents, to me it seems very slimy, unless she did in fact unless there is in fact a real threat to her danger and to her life or to her safety, in which case she should swear to an affidavit and file the affidavit with the courts, and she should report matters to police. But just to insinuate this is a slur against James Coates, what she did in court yesterday, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know you got to go, but I have reviewed that version of that section of the criminal code that allows any justice system participant to be secret, and you have to have a written application. There's about 10 conditions. The judge has to balance the public interest of society and other measures to protect. What happened yesterday wasn't just slimy innately, but the process of it was clearly contrary to the law. I think Karen Thorsrud knows deep down inside that what she is doing is contrary to the nature of Canada and Canadians. And you know what? You're a public person. prosecuting in the name of the Queen, you own it. And if you don't like it, quit and be rid of your disgraceful job. No one's forcing her to put pastors in jail. Anyways, John, it's great to have you. Thank you for joining us. I know you've got to go right now, so we'll say goodbye. I want to give a shout out to your website, jccf.ca. Stands for Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca. Folks can chip in. You actually get a charity tax credit because these guys are a registered civil liberties public interest law firm. So feel free to chip in if you want to help John and his team fight for Pastor Coates. That's what the website looks like. There you get tax receipts. It's the whole meal deal. John, great to see you again. Good luck out there.
Good to see you.
All right.
Have a great day. Take care.
We'll
Bye.
let you go. We got to let him go because he's got to go and do other stuff. All right. That was John Carpay. I want to catch up on the super chats, so I'm going to whip through those as fast as I can. Nancy Williams, $5. Who is Jason Kenney's boss? Not Albertans right now. Is it Dr. Tam, the CCP? Why is Christianity persecuted in Canada? Well, what I don't understand, and you know, I read the U.S. Supreme Court cases. There was a case out of Massachusetts and a case out of California, if I'm recalling. And this was once Kavanaugh and I think Amy Coney Barrett were on the bench. And I think Clarence Thomas might have written the judgment, maybe it was Justice Alito. It was a great ruling. And the U.S. Supreme Court, maybe you can call that up. They talked about casinos and stuff. I don't know if I don't look up U.S. Supreme Court rulings often, but it was written really beautifully. Sometimes those U.S. Supreme Court judges or their clerks, whoever it is, they really write the stuff like great literature. I think our Canadian Supreme Court. So the U.S. Supreme Court, it would have been Newsom versus Gavin Newsom, and it would be on churches. Maybe, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a lot to go on. But there's this one, I think it might have been Alito, or I can't remember the name of the judge. Let me summarize it for you. If you can find it, Justin, great. Yes, yeah, you see that there? Good, wow, you got that in like 60 seconds. Supreme Court of the United States, South Bay United Pentecostal Church versus Gavin Newsom, Governor of California, and all. And then just scroll down a little bit. Okay. Can you word search casino? I think that was there. Yeah, there we go. Look at this. Okay, scroll up just a little bit. This is Judge Gorsuch. Yeah, okay, here we go. I'm just going to read a little bit, okay? If I have a quibble with the court's order, it's with final factor singing. Okay, on further inspection, the singing ban, scroll down, may not be what it first appears. It seems California's powerful entertainment industry has won an exemption. So once more, we appear to have a state playing favorites during a pandemic, expending considerable effort to protect lucrative industries, casinos in Nevada, movie studios in California, while denying similar largesse to its faithful. Once more, too, the state has not explained how a total ban on religious singing is narrowly tailored to its legitimate public health concerns, even if a full congregation, okay, scroll down a little bit. Anyhow, I won't go too deep on this, other than, right at the bottom, drafting narrowly tailored regulations can be difficult. Scroll down. But if Hollywood may host a studio audience or film a singing competition, while not a single soul may enter California's churches, synagogues, and mosques, something has gone seriously awry. So they were banning singing because you're exhaling. Scroll down a little bit more. Okay, that's good enough. That's good. I could spend forever. We could do a whole show on that ruling. The point that the U.S. Supreme Court made, and I don't know if you noticed it there, but under the old court, freedom of speech lost. But with these new judges on there, it won. What the U.S. Supreme Court said, if I remember correctly, and I read that wonderful case and I recommend it to you, is if you're going to ban things because you've got some Ebola-like crisis, all right. But if you only ban churches and let Walmarts go, it's obviously not an Ebola crisis, is it? And I love the details there, wasn't that? No singing. Oh, except if you're Hollywood with a singing show, right? Like, singing is the reason they say you can't have a church. But if it's America's Got Talent, if it's American Idol, is that even still on? X Factor, whatever the shows are these days. That's okay because it's Hollywood, not those old boring churches. So what the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a number of examples, casinos, Hollywood, there were a bunch of, is you cannot treat churches any worse than you treat anyone else. And you're shutting down a church when down the road there's a jam-packed Walmart and Costco? That ain't science, brothers. That ain't science. Okay, let me speed up here. Tyler Beach, $10. Hi again, Ezra is a born-again Christian who's actually served time in ERC. I can tell you feeling love and support from the outside is crucial. Can you get us info to send Pastor money in mail? Hey, not a bad idea. You know, I remember when I was helping my buddy Tommy Robinson, he was in maximum security in Belmarsh Prison, and before that in HMP Onley, or if I'm remembering the name of the prison right, in Hull. He was in 3 prisons when I was helping him. Yeah, he said that the letters is what, you know, it's a great idea. Justin, could you remind me to do that? Maybe tell Yelena to remind me to do that. I got to get, because he's going to be there for 8 weeks now. Tommy told me that just to kill time, he got so many letters, he would spend 2 hours a day just reading his mail. And believe it or not, in HMP Belmarsh, they had an email system. You could send inmates emails. It cost like $1. And he wasn't allowed to reply, I don't think, but he got the email. So that's a great idea. Remind me to do that, because I know that makes, I've never served time in prison, obviously, but I've visited prisoners. And contact with the outside world in the form of letters or personal visits is very helpful, I can see, and I was told. I don't know if they allow human visits because of the pandemic. Benjamin Van Drunen, $10. Thank you. Ray W, £10. Karen Thorsrud. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. If it's a government phone number for it, it's no problem. I think I might have just acquired KarenThorsrud.com. I think I might have done that. Please forward URL to my live stream. So when I was in one of the rare moments today when I was letting John and Sheila talk, I sent a little note to Sarah. I said, hey, Sarah, looks like KarenThorsrud.com is available. I am a collector of high-value curios and URLs, domains. I got an email from someone wanting to buy one of mine. Did I tell you this? Someone wanted to buy section230.com. I got an offer. Someone emailed me out of the blue saying, I'll offer you $500 for a domain name, section30.com. I said, no thanks. Let's get back to the show. I'm going to get back to the Super Chats. I don't believe in doxing people, and by doxing people, I mean providing their private information. I don't want to know where her house is. I don't want to know her private personal telephone. I don't want to know anything about her kids. I don't want to know anything personal or private. But when you are a public prosecutor doing so in the name of the Queen, in a public court, sentencing a man to prison, that aspect of your life is not private. And that is what the new website, KarenThorsrud.com, will talk about. But it's important to know that KarenThorsrud.com, of which I am the proud owner, has limits. KarenThorsrud.com will not dox her, will not engage in anything regarding her private or personal life. But it will certainly investigate her public actions, which she does while wielding considerable state power. How about them apples? What do you think of that, Justin? You saw that coming a mile away, didn't you? You were shocked it took so long. Yeah, me too. Hey, what's your name? Nice to meet you. I'm Ezra Levant. Oh, what do you do for a living? I'm the proprietor of KarenThorsrud.com. This is my main That's what I do. How about you? I sell insurance. Paul Williamson, 50 smackers. Thanks, Paul. I'm sickened by what's happening to Pastor James. I've watched the UK descend into a police state over the last year. I see Canada becoming a society crushing free speech and freedom of assembly. We are destroying our own democratic principles. You're so right. Hey, how are we doing on freepastorjames.com? I'm also the proprietor of that website. I think we have to deliver that petition, actually, if we haven't already. I can't remember if we've delivered that petition. How many signatures on that page? 10,969. All right, can someone put a link to this in the chat? Folks, that's only at 10,969. I mean, that's respectable, but our goal is 25,000 signatures. Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church remains behind bars today. That's true. Sign our petition to show your support and take a stand against the tyrannical COVID enforcement Pastor James and his church are facing. Yeah, I'd love to get that number higher, and then we can take that in. I think we should give it to both Jason Kenney and Casey Madu, the Justice Minister, and Karen Thorsrud. Joyful Heart, $5. Every household received 2 postcards from Canada Post. People are sending them to their premier, asking politely to end the lockdown. Let's flood them. Yeah, I didn't know Canada Post had so much money to throw around. That's wonderful. Space Dave, $2,005. What's sorrow for those who say that evil is good and good is evil, that dark is light and light is dark, that bitter is sweet and sweet is bitter. Isaiah 5:20. You know what? That's from the old book, isn't it? I should know my book of Isaiah. What's your favorite version? King James? New King James? Do you have an opinion on that? You know, King James was named after the king of England, who thought we need a standard version of this Bible. And he hired 24 of the leading scholars, writers, theologians, historians, because everyone was using a different prayer book. And imagine, and in fact, I bought a book a while back called God's Secretaries. Imagine writing the Bible by committee. Can you imagine that? But it worked. One of the finest works of history, literature, religion of all time was written by a committee. I'm not talking about the original Bible. I'm talking about the King James Version. Now, it was written at the same time as Shakespeare. This was all happening at the same time. London, the capital of the world. The New World had been discovered. The British Empire was flourishing, growing. They had just defeated the Spanish some 20 years earlier. And King James, with whom I have some disagreements, said we got to get ourselves a standard version. And the wording, I just love it. So I'm going to read to you just very quickly, and I know people hate this when I go on these tangents, but I tell you, Isaiah 5:20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. All right, you were in King James Version. I recommend that version because it makes you go slow and really think about it. Olga, Jenny, $5. Love you, Sheila. Sending you love, light, prayers, and straight. Sheila's the best. Timothy Powell, 20 pounds. Thanks, Timothy. Nathaniel, $5. I believe in freedom of practice. Religion or otherwise, no government has the right to enforce these laws against churches with no research to back up. Well, that's the thing. I think these public health tyrants, and by that I refer to these unelected, unaccountable, emergency powers wielding nobodies that are suddenly somebodies that we all have to obey, I think that they believe they are unlimited in their power. And if you're a religious person, especially a Christian, you say, no, you have a great deal of power, but there is a limit on your power because you are not actually a God king. You're not a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You know what that means in Latin? Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know what that means? Rex, king. Tyrannosaurus, tyrant lizard king. That's what Tyrannosaurus Rex means, tyrant lizard king. You're not the Tyrannosaurus Rex. You're not the tyrant king. You're a big shot, but you are not God. And who would say such a thing to a tyrant? Someone who believes in God. If you don't believe in God, if all you do is believe in man and raw power, then you're going to obey these Tyrannosaurus Rexes. Because they say they're the boss and they're going to tear you to pieces if you don't. What are you going to do? They're going to put you in prison. You don't want to go to prison, do you? Marco Palico, $5, 10 cents for every time you said her name. What, Karen Thorsrud? Is that what you're talking about? Is that whose name? Karen Thorsrud? Is that who you mean? Karenthorrsrud? You know, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I own KarenThorsrud.com and .ca because I'm a patriot. Hugh Prendergast, $7. Karen Thorsrud, first name ironic. Blame Kenny. He's in charge. He's responsible. And of course, the CCP railhead. I don't know what that means. Hugh Prendergast, $7. Are any Orthodox or Roman Catholic parishes in Alberta doing or saying anything relevant? You know what? I should ask Sheila that question because she knows that scene better than me. Janet CH, $5. Pear character lifting some weights. I'm sort of pear-shaped too, but Blaine Scott, $25. Hi Ezra, after working for Magna behind plexiglass at table for the past 6 months with GP affirmed medical mask exemption, I was laid off without pay. Letter to the office to provide masks to increase my mask tolerance. Can you help? I don't know. I get a lot of requests for help about masks, and I know I'm a bit behind in my promise to launch our mask defense website. Maybe I'll work on that on the weekend. Okay, I'm sorry. And I know that's not the answer you want. We have a plan. And I know I said this last week. I've been so very busy. I beg your pardon. I don't have help for you now, but I hopefully will have help for you next week, okay? Blaine Scott, $5. Minister of Labor and Human RC Legal said sudden denial of mask exemption in factories discrimination when they say they've been accommodating for the last 6 months. Okay, isn't that interesting? Earth is flat, 279. We all knew CV is for the New World Order long ago. Oh, coronavirus. Marc-Andre Lariviere, $4. Thank you, Mark. Ray W, £10. Justin guitar. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Scotty J, $5. Bail denied in your posting Ben Bankus comedy vids, making a mockery of our very real issues. Congrats. Hey, Scotty J, I can chew gum and walk at the same time. We are a news site that has news, commentary, and activism. So we have news, which I brought you some today. We have commentary. I brought you some of that today. And we brought activism. Brought a little bit of that today. We did a little bit of all three. Ben Bankus is not to everyone's taste. In fact, that may be an understatement. Some people might say, put on a shirt. You know, I got all these dad jokes, right? I told you one the other day. I'm working on my fitness pizza in my mouth. I have an old dad joke. It goes like this. Justin, have you heard this before? Yeah, so I was at the beach, and they came up to me and said, take off that dirty, wrinkled sweater. And I said, I ain't wearing one. Is that a dad joke? It's not very funny. It's not very funny. I haven't told it in a while. Maybe there's a reason for that. You have heard that before, from me or from someone else? From someone else. I think it's funny. I think Ben Bankus is comfortable with his body. Too comfortable. You shouldn't be, no one should be that comfortable with their body. Unless you're like a supermodel. You should not be that plussed about your body. It's almost, you know what? It's almost like he looks for excuses to showing his, throw up the video. People don't know what I'm talking about. You know, you want to show a little skin? Give me the B-roll. Is it relevant? Ben Bankus was doing a little sketch on the cancellation of the Dr. Seuss books. So how does being naked have anything to do with that? Now he's wearing a Cat in the hat. Okay, I get that. Okay, maybe in Dr. Seuss the critters don't wear a lot of clothing. It's not up yet? So what's he complaining about? Oh, he's probably talking about the Eileen de Villa one. I thought he was appalled at Ben Bankus's partial nudity. That's the next video. Well, let me tell you this, Scotty. You know, in some of these industrial sites, you have an eye wash station. You ever see that? You ever go into a station and they have like do you know what I'm talking about? In case your eye, God forbid, gets splashed with acid, you go and it's basically water, maybe with some alkaline, you eye wash. Get ready. Because Ben Bankis is not barefoot all over, but it's a little too much skin. Happy Face Candle Morrison, $10. I just got a free postage page postcard from Canada Post. Right here, right now, campaign. Did anyone else? Let's all send them to Pastor James. You know what? I'm going to get that. Remind me to get that because I want to publish how to write him a letter. Simple man, $5. Our legal system is now a joke, just like our politicians and the so-called public health. You're right. Lynn, $5. Karen Thorsrud. Shout out to Justin and the whole Rebel team. Heather Skinner, $4. Thanks, Heather. Ray W, £5. Who was the best Canadian PM? In the UK, I think Maggie. Well, let me first say that although I did admire Margaret Thatcher, how can you put anyone up against Winston Churchill? I don't even think there's a contest. I mean, I don't know my olden times Prime Minister history well enough. I would think that, you know, I admire Queen Victoria, but that's a queen, that's not a prime minister. How can you say that anyone other than Churchill was the best PM? Brian Holder, $5. What is the purpose of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms? Remind me, what are the first sentences on the document? Well, you're exactly right. I think I know them under the supremacy of God or something, subject to, let me just read that. The very first, it's the preamble. It's even before you get to the enumerated rights. Let me read it for you. I'm sorry I don't remember it. Whereas, you want to grab this on the screen? Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Before you even get to section 1. Yeah, you see that right there? Whereas Canada is founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That's even before section 1. It's the first words in it. Did you know that, Justin? So that, oh, you did? Yeah, well, yeah, we call this up all the time, don't we? So that's the very first part. Then you have the rights and freedoms, and then your fundamental freedoms. Scroll down a little, we got that on the screen here. Look at that. Everyone has the following fundamental freedoms, and I say again, they are in order. Like, it's not a random list. Freedom of conscience and religion. That has to be first. Then comes thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press. Then comes peaceful assembly. And then comes freedom of, so it really is a logical order when you think about it. To have this in the reverse order would make no sense. You can all get together, peaceful assembly. How does that make sense if you don't have freedom of thought? You have freedom of the press. How does that make sense if you're not allowed to believe? Freedom of conscience. And then lower down, democratic rights. How would a campaign or a democratic right make any sense? How would a House of Commons make any sense if there was no free speech? You see, like there is a logic here. Democratic rights, scroll down a little bit. Mobility rights. By the way, those are being violated all the time these days because of these quarantines. Legal rights. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. Oh, unless you land at the airport and have to go straight into a hotel quarantine without a hearing. Look, go back up again, section 8 there. Everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. But we showed you a video last, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, of the cops walking right into a church in Calgary. No search warrant. Detention, everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned, unless you're Pastor Coates. And the reason I say that he was arbitrarily detained is that the law he's accused of breaking does not contemplate detention. Section 10, arrest or detention. Everyone has the right on arrest or detention to be informed promptly, instruct counsel, have the see that's bail, right? Proceedings, any person charged with an offense informed without reasonable delay. Try this go for is a bail. Yeah. E, not to be denied reasonable bail without just cause. Well, we just spent 20 minutes talking about a man denied reasonable bail without just cause. Is he a flight risk? No. Is he a danger? No. So he was denied a reasonable bail without a just cause. Scroll down. 12. Everyone has the right not to be subjected to any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. I would say it is cruel and unusual treatment to put a pastor in jail for 10 weeks. Would you not? What else could possibly meet that test? Equality before the law. Everyone is equal despite color, religion, etc. Unless you work at a Walmart, in which you're above the law. And then you get into the goofy stuff like official languages and multiculturalism and the Canadian handouts and welfare state. But the fundamental freedoms part, the legal freedoms part, that's pretty solid. That's our Constitution Act, Charter of Rights. All right. I think the Ben Bankers conversation drove away about 1,000 viewers. Let me just check our super chats, and then if we're caught up on that stuff, we'll go. Heather Skinner, $7. Love you guys. I will be going to KarenThorsrud.com. Thanks very much. I don't know yet what functionality KarenThorsrud.com will have. Will it be, who knows, a dating site? Will it be what's the latest crypto prices? What do people want to see? Sports scores. Not a lot of sports going on these days. What do the people want? Dogecoin. I don't know yet what KarenThorsrud.com will do. Let's type it in. Hey, wouldn't you know? KarenThorsrud.com is live. Do you want to open up a browser? Thank you, Justin. Open up a browser. I want to show us you typing it in, because it's a funny little thing. So just open up any page, like a Google page or whatever, or in your browser. Okay, so not even Google. Go up to the top on your browser. Yeah, and just, the top there. So type in at the very top there. Yeah, type in KarenThorsrud.com. And then hit return. Are you spelling it right? Karen Thorsrud. You're missing an R, yeah. And what happens? It loads this live stream. KarenThorsrud.com forwards to this live stream. You can close it. It's just resolving there or something there. What's my point? You type in KarenThorsrud.com, you're going to get a lot of KarenThorsrud.com content. For all your Karen Thorsrud content needs, go to KarenThorsrud.com. One more super chat. Scotty J, with Ben's vids, you're just another tabloid rag. Well, Scotty J, I think Ben has sort of a dark Russian sense of humor. Fatalist sense of humor, an absurdist sense of humor. And I will admit he's not always funny. But I think his humor is a fit for the times. And if you don't like Ben Bankers' humor, and let's be honest, many don't, just don't click on it. Or click on it and vent, whatever. We've had comedians do videos for us on and off. Gavin McInnes did a lot of comedy videos in his day. Ben is doing some. And way back then, Justin, we had a couple of your buddies, right? Those two lads who would do, you know what? They had one. They had one about there's chickens and cows. Remember that joke video they did? You know that one? There were 22 chickens and 48 cows. No, that's too bad. We'll do that another day. But it was a great joke. It was in 2015 we did that. Okay, well, we'll get that for next week. It's 1:29. We've been here for a while. Daphne Divine, $20. Ezra, care to share what you wear on your lower half while reporting to us all? My money's on jammies. Curious about Justin too. Love you a long time. First of all, Daphne, thank you. Second of all, I just want to remind you I am married. So I'm off the market. When I talked about making KarenThorsrud.com a dating site, I was joking. I just got my jeans on, jeans and runners. So I'm not wearing suit pants. It's just jeans and runners, and I got my white socks on because I know you're going to laugh at me, but I'm going to go on we got a treadmill. I'm going to go on the treadmill, watch a show, go on the treadmill, trying to be less fat. So it's just jeans, and I got some sneakers on today. It's a very intimate question. Earth is flat. Justin says he has pants on. Yeah, no one here wears pajamas. I've never seen pajamas here. Have you? Once? Okay. I think everyone here pretty much dresses casually, right? But appropriately. Appropriately, but casually. Yeah, people wear jeans or khakis. Who was that? David wears shorts. I can't remember David wearing shorts. Yeah, no, there's nothing weird here in terms of how people dress. I typically take my jacket off when I'm just in the office. Earth is flat 279. Niagara's still full of sewage. It shows they care. I don't know what you mean by that. But look, it's 1:30. We've veered off course a few times to indulge in some funny jokes or some banter, but I think it was a very serious show today. And Justin, I think that we should extract a whole bunch of clips today. I think the full exchange with John Carpay we should have as our guest segment on tonight's show, because that was about 20 minutes or half an hour. I think we have to put that. I think that whole thing should be excerpted as its own clip, and that whole thing should be put on the show tonight. I think the Karen Thorsrud business, both the conversation with Sheila, I think we could have a clip with Sheila, a clip with John, and then when we buy KarenThorsrud.com, I think that's another clip. There's a lot of things I want to share widely. Folks, before we go, can you do me the favor and go to freepastorjames.com? What's our count on that? I just want to take a quick count on that before we go. It was like 1969, if I remember, when we checked about 20 minutes ago. Maybe we should have KarenThorsrud.com. Oh, good. Like it was 960. Well, 10 something? It was 10 something? I don't remember. Okay, so we're above 11,000. You're right. That's right. It wasn't under 9. It was over 10. I remember that. All right. Well, it's over 11,000. That's good. We've got to deliver that petition. I think we should deliver it to a bunch of places. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend. You know what we should do? We should get some clothing or buttons or something in solidarity with Pastor James. I don't know. I mean, it's just the idea of a pastor being jailed on purpose, like not swept up by accident and quickly released when authorities realized what they were doing was insane. Like he has now had several touches with the court system, and they are confirming, throw that man in prison, throw away the key, essentially. And he's going to have his hearing on May 3rd to 5th, and he's going to lose. Is he going to stay in jail forever? Like, he's not going to bend the knee, I don't think. He seems resolved. Like, if, as John Carpay said, he could leave any time. Isn't that the crazy thing, Justin? Like, he can walk out. Everyone else in that prison is there because they murdered someone or were violent or whatever the accusation against them is. He's in there because he won't say, I'm not going to church. So the minute he just says, all right, I'm not going to church, he's out. So he's obviously not going to do that. I mean, maybe they can break his spirit. But he seems to be a guy who's thought a lot about what it means to be Christian, I think. I mean, it's his job, right? I hope this spreads. I hope this spreads to every church in Alberta and every church across Canada. And I hope that his sacrifice will not only not be in vain, but that it will inspire others to rise up and embrace their freedoms, to be that guy in the Hitler photo, the one guy who's got his arm crossed, not Sieg Heiling. I hope it is the little spark that catches fire, and therefore that it will not go to waste. It's pretty easy to say you got courage to do a weekend in jail. If you said, Ezra, you're doing 10 weeks in maximum security, that would be a test of anyone. I mean, I don't know how I would pass that test. I've never been put to such a test. I can't believe we're doing that to a Christian pastor, and of all the jurisdictions in Canada, to do that in Edmonton is particularly crazy. All right, I'm going to go. Thanks, everybody. Do you have a dog video to end the day? Okay. So to Scott J. or whoever didn't want to see lighthearted things, Scotty, we're going to show dog video now. So this is lighthearted, and don't be mad. Here's the dog video. Take a look.
Who's hungry? Want some food?